declared former President Donald Trump the projected winner of the 2024 presidential election.
So this makes him now the second president elected for 2 non-consecutive terms. The decision was made after Trump was named the winner of Wisconsin. It is one of 4 battleground states the former president won. The other 3 right now are still undecided.
Trump addressed the nation earlier this morning from his watch party in West Palm Beach. On stage was his wife, Melania Trump, and running mate Senator J.D. Vance, as well as several members of his campaign staff. There are a few photos of him we have backstage preparing those remarks to claim victory. He thanked everyone in his campaign, everyone who has supported him, and talked about his plans for the future.
Thank you very much. Wow. Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends on this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that. We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day, I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again. And in addition to having won the battleground states of North Carolina, I love these places, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
On the other side of the ticket, we are waiting to hear from Vice President Kamala Harris and her joint campaign with Governor Tim Walz. The two joined hundreds of supporters at Howard University to watch the results as they came in. Harris's co-chair, Cedric Richmond, briefly came out to address the crowd around midnight.
Good evening, Howard. Good evening, HU. I want to say good evening to all of the Harris campaign, the campaign family. Thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in the promise of America. We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the Vice President tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
North Carolina was one of 7 battleground states heading into this election, considered largely a toss-up, but history repeated itself for a third time. North Carolina went to Trump, as it did in both 2016 and 2020, but with much greater margins. Look at this, the vote difference of 191,000 separating former President Trump from Vice President Kamala Harris, 51 to 47. That is a greater vote total than what we saw in the last presidential election of 2020, where only 74,000 votes separated Trump from Biden. And then look at 2016, if I can pull it up here. 173,000 votes. So this election a lot more similar to what we saw 8 years ago, even though North Carolina for a third time split the ticket, going for a Democrat governor and Republican president. I want to show you the Electoral College because we are still watching some of those states that are still too close to call. So you're looking at this map. We saw Wisconsin come in most recently, officially giving former President Trump that 270 threshold he needed to clinch this projected victory here. But we still see Michigan with 15 electoral votes uncalled, Nevada with 16, and Arizona with 11. None of those, even if Harris were to win all 3, would be enough to give her the win. Again, Trump already has 277, which is more than what he needed to get this victory. I want to turn on the lean here based on how these results are shaping up so far. And it looks like all 3 of these states that are still outstanding will indeed go to Trump, a map that is very, very similar, in fact, identical to what we saw in 2016 between Trump and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. So we will obviously watch this very closely, but there is a theme here and a lot to discuss and a lot to analyze about why Americans felt they wanted this type of a White House again. We'll talk with our political analyst Jason Husser coming up in just a few minutes.
Throughout the morning. The world is waking up to news that former President Donald Trump is heading back to the White House. CBS's Leah Mishkin is in London with reaction from across the globe.
Donald Trump.
President Trump.
Donald Trump.
It's the headline buzzing around the world. News of Donald Trump's presidential victory. A Trump win is what most Israelis were hoping for.
I think it's good for Israel, yeah, no doubt. It's better than Kamala Harris.
Israel's prime minister called it history's greatest comeback and a new beginning for America. Ukraine was also tracking results closely as it relies heavily on billions of dollars in U.S. military support. Trump has said he could end the war with Russia in 24 hours if elected.
You're the president. Please do it, Mr. Trump.
Ukraine's president congratulated Trump on a, quote, impressive election victory, words echoed by other world leaders like Britain's prime minister. But on the streets of London, Brits didn't hold back.
I think the American people are bonkers.
I think no one's ready for Trump again, let's be honest. It would have been nice having a woman in the office.
It's an election millions around the world were invested in, even though they didn't have a vote. Leah Mishkin, CBS News.
A spokesperson for Russia's president said he's not aware of any plans by Vladimir Putin to congratulate Trump and describe relations with the U.S. at a historic low, presumably a reference to American support for Ukraine after Russia's invasion.
All right, let's bring in political analyst Jason Husser with the Elon poll. Jason, we've talked a lot over this last week or so about what you were seeing as far as the polling that you were conducting out of Elon and the early voting numbers that came in showing this historic turnout for North Carolina and historic turnout for Republicans, which usually wait until Election Day to vote. You don't seem surprised by this outcome.
The early voting numbers in North Carolina were showing really good signs for Republicans. They were showing the Republicans were outcompeting Democrats when it came to early voting turnout. And it also looked that there were a lot of male voters who had not early voted, which would mean Trump was going to drive up the margins even further on Election Day. The pollsters across the country, myself included, have known we've had a problem with getting a certain group of Trump voters to talk to us. We've done corrections. We've done better in this cycle than we did in 2016. Polls generally told the story of what could happen. Almost all the swing states had polling averages leaning towards Trump. But we still have a problem that Trump voters weren't talking to us, and our corrections worked, but not quite enough.
Interesting. Going off of that, when we talk about the polling numbers, for weeks we've been saying this is a tight race, that it's going to be a close call. You know, back in 2020, we didn't know till days later who won the election. Where do you think Harris fell short, and why was Trump able to edge her out so early?
This was a loss by sort of 1,000 locations. On almost every demographic where Trump needed to do well, he did well, and maybe slightly better than what he sort of expected to do. There's not a single thing I can point to of saying this was the sort of one reason that Trump pushed over the edge, except that Trump has done really well when he's running as an outsider in a time when he can point to problems. And the 2024 cycle is one in which, particularly inflation, is something that was on voters' minds. Trump was able to point to really Biden and say, this inflation happened largely under the Biden administration, and he held the Democrats to account for it. And that's why I think we're seeing the sort of the sweep of the battleground states. Not a landslide, but a sweep of the battlegrounds.
Let's talk about the governor's race. There was a 14-point lead Josh Stein had and still has with 100% now of precincts reporting. He was projected to win this race largely even before the Mark Robinson scandal regarding the CNN report came out. But did you expect this large of a margin for that race?
In many ways, this race shaped out exactly how I anticipated. I thought that Robinson was going to do actually a little bit better than his polling average. We had Stein up 20 points over Robinson. I didn't think those numbers were right because what happened, and we're seeing this in the results, is a lot of Republicans skipped that race. They didn't vote for it, or they voted for a third party. We're seeing more third party voting happening in the governor's race. It's not surprising that this was the outcome. It does seem that the CNN story hurt Robinson even more, but even if that story hadn't have broken, Robinson was on a losing trajectory. It also looks like that the Council of State races that were most tied to Robinson were ones that Democrats did well in. And so the Council of State races where Democrats were able to really run ads of showing the Republican next to Robinson were ones that Republicans ended up losing.
Dan Bishop, for example, you saw Jeff Jackson win that race. We saw a whole slate of Democrats actually now in leadership positions, projected to be in leadership positions going forward. Another example of how North Carolina splits this ticket.
North Carolina has been the ticket splitting state for many years. If you go back to 2004, we saw huge ticket splitting between the Democratic winning governor's race, Bush winning North Carolina by a huge margin. But I didn't think we'd ever see that again, or at least not this soon, because North Carolina is so tight, things are so partisan. But what we saw last night was that a candidate for governor in North Carolina who is deeply unpopular can lead to very different outcomes and really have down ballot effects throughout the whole state.
I want to go back to the presidential election. Over the last couple of months, we've seen both candidates come to North Carolina pretty hard. You know, they were trying to get those 16 electoral votes. Where do you think that the Harris campaign fell short when it came to coming here, or how they could have navigated the North Carolina space?
These campaign visits definitely matter, and the candidates need to do visits. They may as well use all the resources, but it's not clear always that visits are what's moving the needle for campaigns. Really, it's about messaging, about clarifying are things good if you're the incumbent, or about pointing out that things are bad if you're the opponent. So I think the messaging probably had more to do with Trump's victory than the campaign visits. I'm not sure if Harris had done 10 more visits if it had made a difference in the state.
So Jason, stick with us. We're going to analyze the governor's race in a little more detail. Of course, a big win for Attorney General Josh Stein, the projected winner in that race with a significant lead over Robinson. He has 54% of the vote, making this a split ticket. Our Kevin Kennedy reported from Raleigh on what was an exciting night for the governor-elect.
It was certainly a big celebration here in downtown Raleigh last night as a number of people showed up to support all Democratic candidates. The headliner last night is now Governor-elect Josh Stein. A big crowd turned out to support all of the candidates, but specifically to hear Josh Stein speak and hopefully see him win this race. Josh Stein took the stage about 9 o'clock last night, saying that he was honored to be the next governor of North Carolina. He talked about the promise to kind of work together with all parties, all sides of the aisle, to move our state forward. He said he believes that the promise of North Carolina, it doesn't matter where you come from, that shouldn't limit your potential. He talked about investing in all of our state and specifically gave a shout out to teachers. He said he really does, though, want to work together across the aisle to make this state the best state it can be. He then thanked the crowd that was on hand.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is a treat to be with you. Thank you, Governor Cooper, for that very generous introduction. And thank you, North Carolina. Tonight, the people of North Carolina resoundingly embraced a vision that's optimistic, forward-looking, and welcoming. A vision that's about creating opportunity for every North Carolinian.
Now, Governor-elect Josh Stein ended the evening by thanking his campaign staff, saying they worked some long days and longer nights. He then thanked his wife and kids, saying that last night was an opportunity to celebrate, but today it's about getting back to work for North Carolina. In downtown Raleigh, Kevin Kennedy, WFMY News 2.
And Lieutenant Governor and Republican candidate for North Carolina, Governor Mark Robinson, lost that race to Democratic candidate Josh Stein. Robinson says, though, he isn't letting this loss get him down. Listen to what he had to say. After the race was called, he told supporters he wasn't sad. He said there was still a lot left to do as Lieutenant Governor, and he really wants to hone in on helping Western North Carolina get back to normal, among other things.
We've got a lot of work still to do in the sphere of education in these last 2 months. We've got a lot of work to do still for the people of North Carolina. We're going to do it with great energy.
Moving forward with his defamation lawsuit against CNN following a report the network made. The report claims Robinson posted several sexually graphic and racist comments to a pornographic website nearly 10 years ago.
All right, let's talk about one of those key points brought up there, Western North Carolina. We saw huge voter turnout in Western North Carolina. It was even greater than that of the rest of the state. There were efforts, of course, to make sure ballots got to people whose homes were devastated by Helene, to make sure that they could get to the ballot box. We did see Robinson do okay in some of those 25 counties affected by Helene. Why do you think that is?
Hard times have a way to bring people together, and that's what we saw, I think, with Helene. Our polling was showing that people in the hardest hit areas were actually saying they were more motivated to vote and more likely to vote despite the difficulties that they were facing. The areas that are surrounding Asheville are particularly Republican areas. When the storm devastation was becoming apparent, a lot of Republicans were really worried because those disaster counties were about the same margin for Trump that Trump won the whole state by. So it's not surprising Robinson's doing well in those mountain areas that are not the city of Asheville or the Asheville immediate liberal-leaning suburbs. Robinson does have a future ahead, but that path is really unclear. He won 40% of the vote, which means a lot of folks are not done with him, would like to hear more from Robinson, but it's going to be a sort of a difficult journey to manage losing this heavily in terms of what's next for him.
So we have a Democratic governor and then a Republican presidential candidate that will be sworn in next year. With this difference, beyond the CNN report that came out about Robinson, why do you think that he fell so far behind?
Robinson was taking policy positions to the right of the center of the Republican Party. He swept the primaries pretty quickly, but Republicans once again nominated someone who was further right than the center of North Carolina. I think that was his big vulnerability. He took positions that were more extreme than what even Republicans wanted on issues like abortion or schools and a number of other sort of social issues, when he could have been sort of just running much more on let's have a referendum on how Democrats have done over the last 4 years or 8 years.
I'm looking at the vote totals for president versus governor. 2.8 million North Carolinians voted for Trump for president, but when you look at the governor total, only 2.2 million North Carolinians voted for Robinson. So that support, even with the Trump endorsement of Robinson very early on in this campaign, did not seem to materialize for him in this overall result.
There's 600,000 vote gap between Robinson and Trump.
Significant.
Some of that's explained by people swapping to Stein, but some of it's also explained by we're seeing higher levels of third-party voting, protest voting by Republicans, as well as people leaving the ballot blank. So these would be Republicans who were thinking Robinson didn't align with their values, but still couldn't bring themselves to vote for a Democrat.
Looking at the lieutenant governor's race, this will be the first time in a while where we have both a Democratic governor and Democratic lieutenant governor. Will that help that party get more accomplished?
In many ways, Josh Stein is as well positioned to make an impact on North Carolina public policy as Roy Cooper was really for only part of his term. When Roy Cooper was governor and Republicans didn't have a supermajority, he was able to at least advance some of the legislative priorities that Democrats have had in the state. We're seeing a similar setup for Stein, but he's also going to have a lieutenant governor in order to back him up. So that means when he travels out of state, he doesn't have to sort of worry about the acting governor being in odds with where he is.
Okay, we are going to pause here on Plus to go to a television cut into CBS Morning. So you'll still see kind of a behind the scenes look of what we're doing as we prepare to go back on TV. And then as soon as that wraps up, we'll join you back here around 7:30 on WFMY Plus. Hope you stay with us.
We have a winner. The presidential race has been called, and Donald Trump is once again projected to become our commander-in-chief. Before securing the necessary 270 Electoral College votes, the former and now president-elect took the stage in West Palm Beach, Florida, in front of mass supporters. He rallied the crowd with the support of his family and running mate J.D. Vance behind him.
Just as I did in my first term, we had a great first term, a great first term. I will govern by a simple motto: promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again. And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in this noble and righteous endeavor.
We are waiting to hear from Vice President Kamala Harris in her joint campaign with Governor Tim Walz. The two were supposed to join hundreds of supporters at Howard University to watch the results as they came in. Harris's co-chair briefly came out at midnight to tell the crowd Harris would instead address the community and nation later today. We will be carrying her comments live as they happen. Stay with us on WFNY Plus for the latest live coverage as the morning goes on. Let's check in with Christian Morgan, our meteorologist, for a look at the forecast.
Yeah, it's a bit cloudy, a bit foggy out the door this morning, but we'll have a little sunshine back by the middle of the day. Temperatures should be warming into the mid-70s, and I can't totally rule out a sprinkle or stray shower, but I think most of us will stay dry. Our biggest push of rain mainly is going to be to the south, South Carolina and Georgia over the next 24 hours, but we may get a couple of showers here in the Piedmont. Keep you posted. Drying it out, cooling it down as we get into the weekend. High temperatures in the 60s Saturday and Sunday.
Hey, good morning. Yes, we can talk about that. We're about to go back on WFNY Plus. If you're joining us here and you can hear us kind of behind the scenes, we're doing a mic check. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me okay? We will. Welcome back to this WFNY Plus streaming special edition of post-election coverage as more results come in. We talked a lot about the big races that have been called. Here's one we've discussed that has not been called officially, but is looking like it will go to Democrats. I'm with Elon poll director Jason Husser. We're looking at the lieutenant governor's race here, showing currently Rachel Hunt has about 49% of the vote, compared to Hal Weatherman, not far behind her at 47% of the vote. What do you make of these vote totals so far, and do you think Hunt ultimately will have enough to claim the projected victory here?
It certainly looks like Hunt is going to pull this one off. These races are ones in which forecasters are more cautious about because there's not as much polling that takes place. Flipping happens a lot more in the lieutenant governor context, but it does look like for the first time in a while we're going to see a unified governor and lieutenant governor in North Carolina.
This is interesting because the Trump endorsement, Hal Weatherman, was largely projected to do well in this race. What do you think possibly gave Hunt the edge?
One thing that gave Hunt the edge was that it's a really good year for Democrats who are able to juxtapose themselves against Mark Robinson. The other good thing for Hunt is that her last name's Hunt. She's from one of the most prominent political families in North Carolina history, at a time where people looked at the Democratic Party as one that could cover both sides of the aisle. And so I think Hunt got a little bit of a boost from that. But I think it's largely, this is a good year to be a Democrat in the races that could be connected to Mark Robinson. It's also a time where we could see Stein being a little bit more comfortable leaving the state, traveling around than Cooper would have been.
Interesting to look at where Democrats did well, particularly in this race. You see what you would expect, the cities of Asheville, Greensboro, Raleigh, Charlotte, all going blue for her pretty substantially. I mean, 61% supported her in Guilford County. It looks like Forsyth County is about 56%. This is pretty much in line with what we see with these city centers moving Democrats. But you were saying that you had noticed kind of this shift to suburban areas around these big cities also now growing in Democrat support. Why?
It'll take a couple days to dig into this in more detail, but because Raleigh and Charlotte in particular have gotten so expensive, we've had more people move into these locations and we've had new housing units built. A number of Democrats have moved into traditionally really red, right-leaning areas. And it's not just in the two big cities of Raleigh and Charlotte. Even places like Burlington, where I live, have seen more Democrats moving into certain areas, simply because Greensboro and the Triangle have gotten quite expensive.
We do see Alamance County here. Hal Weatherman is up, but it is very tight. Again, emphasizing what you said is this growing Democratic support, particularly in Alamance County. Let's look at how this race compares to that of 4 years ago. And I think we can analyze some trends overall here, where we're seeing Mark Robinson was ahead 4 years ago, but not by much. And then now this office is projected to flip. Why do you think this happened?
Some of this has to do with Robinson wasn't able to give the boost to the down ballot council of state races. Typically, there'd be big rallies for governor in which the lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state would be there as well. They'd be sort of the side act. They'd give a speech, but people would take home a sign for those additional council of state races. They may tell their neighbor, post on Facebook that they went to this rally. When Robinson's rallies just started sort of withering away in terms of attendance, it meant that that extra 100,000 people didn't get the level of outreach they would have otherwise.
It will be interesting to see now these top two offices in North Carolina likely being controlled by Democrats. But let's talk about how that's going to play into our legislature. Republicans projected to keep control of both the North Carolina House and Senate, but they could lose the supermajority to now a Democratic governor.
The supermajority is so critical because if Republicans have it, it means Stein really doesn't have much legislative power. And because they can override any veto he makes, they can sort of ignore him. This one vote advantage, which looks like it's probably going to be for Democrats to sort of break that majority in the House, means that in order for Republicans to pass things, they have to do one of two things. They either have to get Josh Stein on board, or they have to convince at least one Democrat to go against Stein. What that usually will mean is that Stein will have some space to negotiate, and it probably means some of the abortion restrictions that were on at least part of the Republican Party's minds don't have a future for the next couple of years.
All right, a lot more to talk about, Jason. Right now we're going to send it over to Lauren with some results of the superintendent's race.
All right, the time is now 7:35 in the state races. We're learning who North Carolinians want to be the next superintendent of public instruction. Right now, former Guilford County School Superintendent Mo Green is the projected winner over Michelle Morrow. The race was one to watch and was up in the air deep into the hours of the night. Though Green took home the victory, the race was somewhat close. Green kept a 119,000 vote lead. You'll remember their race heated up after it was revealed Morrow had attended the January 6 riots. That's according to the Associated Press. She also allegedly called public schools, quote, liberal indoctrination centers. As of right now, Morrow has not publicly conceded. Green remains optimistic for his new position as state superintendent.
I know what to do. And so it's just a matter then of elevating that to an entire state level and being sure that we think about the sorts of things that are necessary to improve student outcomes, which includes certainly trying to request more funding for our public schools, elevating our educators, certainly engaging those parents and other community members in this work.
A part of Green's platform has been supporting increasing teacher pay and improving school safety and literacy instruction. As we said, this was a big race. A lot of folks were watching. Let's send it back over to Megan with Jason Husser. Meg.
Yeah, this one was really interesting, especially for parents of school-age children. You had a long-standing educator for public schools in North Carolina up against a starkly different candidate, a homeschooling mom who was at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, but said she did not do anything unlawful. But that was talked about a lot in these ads here. So what do you make of the results in this superintendent race?
This is a race that was going to be the sort of number 2 statewide marquee race, regardless of how things worked out. It was going to be a race in which Democrats, and not just Democrats, fellow Republicans sort of went after Morrow for her positions on school choice, on homeschooling, particularly her past history related to January 6th and other really fairly extreme comments. It's also an interesting race because Morrow beat the incumbent Republican in the primary. That usually doesn't happen.
Catherine Truitt,
and
yeah.
Catherine Truitt was probably a better positioned candidate to win statewide in terms of reaching out across the aisle, picking up unaffiliated voters or Democrats saying, well, she's been doing a pretty good job, let's keep her in office. It is a bit counterintuitive position to take, but in some ways Robinson doing so poorly meant that attention moved away from Morrow and instead it moved towards Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Secretary of State. So instead of Republican or Democrats saying, well, we probably aren't going to win these races, let's focus on the superintendent, they moved some attention away from the superintendent towards trying to connect Robinson to Attorney General. So some of that ad space ended up going to races that otherwise they wouldn't have been as competitive in.
Because this is still pretty tight. I mean, she claimed 49% nearly of the vote. Mo Green did very well in Guilford County as expected, 65% of the vote. He ran Guilford County schools for a time. And so it's clear that voters here supported him being in now this top position for education in North Carolina.
It's still too soon to know for sure, but it does look like Green got a bit of a hometown boost here in the Triad. 65% in Guilford County, and Guilford County schools are influential on the entire region. It's such a big district.
Yeah.
Many of the other districts, I know during the pandemic, were looking to say, what's Guilford County doing? It's usually the leader before the smaller districts make decisions.
You mentioned something really important that will continue to be a talking point among families, and that is school choice. You have Republicans in the legislature calling for more funding for school choice, funding for the thousands of families who remain on the wait list for this school choice program, private school vouchers. How do you think that will work with this expected supermajority now broken and Democrats likely in control of the governorship and the lieutenant governor's seat?
We are likely at the status quo for right now when it comes to education policy and funding in North Carolina. Republicans will not be able to pass major changes to education funding structures without Stein being on board. And he will at least have a skeptical eye for any sort of proposal that takes funding away from traditional K-12 schools. It will be interesting over the next couple weeks to hear about the local school board elections throughout the state. For instance, in Alamance County, there was one candidate who was sort of a single issue candidate of wanting to see more charter schools, more school choice in the county, and he didn't win in a right-leaning county.
Well, we will have much more analysis coming up from here. I'll send it over to Lauren with some more results here at the state level. Lauren?
It is now 7:40. Yes, as Megan said, let's take a look through some of those results at the state level. Another race too close to call is the state Supreme Court. Justice Allison Riggs is looking to hold on to her seat. She was appointed by Governor Cooper last year, but is slightly behind Jefferson Griffin. Less than 10,000 votes separate the two there. In Guilford County, State Representative Tracy Clark is keeping her spot in Raleigh. The three-time Tar Heel was appointed to the seat in August. Republican Alan Branson is also keeping his seat. He replaced longtime Representative John Hardister when Hardister resigned this year. Ragsdale alum and Democrat State Representative Cecil Brockman won his re-election. The High Point native is going back for his 6th term in the state house. Let's look at the effort to amend the state constitution. When you cast your ballot, you saw a question at the bottom asking you about who should be able to vote. So voters passed that measure requiring that only U.S. citizens can vote. 77% of voters were for that amendment. To be clear, that's already state and federal law. Leaders say that the amendment simply clarifies the language. To break down some of our state races, I'm going to send it back over to Megan at the Touch.
All right, let's look at our U.S. congressional races in North Carolina. This was not a Senate year for us. Only a third of the U.S. Senate was up, and it looks like Republicans will regain control of the U.S. Senate, at least at this point. Several races nationally still too close to call. But I want to look at our U.S. House races that were on the ballot. District 13. Addison McDowell was going to be the winner. There was no Democratic challenger. I spoke with current District 6 Representative Kathy Manning not too long ago, and she said she wanted to run again, but she knew because of redistricting, she was very unlikely to be able to keep her seat. Because you look at this now, District 6, compared to what it looked like just 2 years ago, it is vastly different. So how did redistricting play a role in our outcome of our U.S. House races?
I've been in North Carolina since 2012 covering North Carolina politics, and the entire time I've been here we've had sort of legal fight after legal fight over the maps, and this is an example about why. This is an example about why so many people are spending so much time and effort arguing about the maps. The changes in North Carolina maps across the state as a whole have given Republicans in Congress a couple of point advantage. Right now, Republicans in Congress and the House of Representatives have a 2-seat lead. That means it's a razor-thin margin. That's why we saw Mike Johnson sort of on the edge of his speakership at all times. North Carolina's map changes will give Republicans a little bit of a cushion to not only potentially retain the House, still too close to call them that, but also giving the Republican Party a bit of a bigger lead, which will mean that party leadership can feel a bit more comfortable that they're not going to get thrown out the first time they do something slightly unpopular.
These boundaries have been highly contested. They've gone through court challenge after court challenge, but ultimately they did stand for this election. I want to look at House District 13 here. Brad Knott, the projected winner by a long shot here, 58% compared to challenger Frank Pierce's 41%. Let's look at how these boundaries changed here from now to 2 years ago. Vastly different, vastly more red now.
North Carolina is a state that is easily given towards gerrymandering. So it's a state that has the political will to do it, but it's also one where we see such clustered populations of Democrats and clustered populations of Republicans. If we look at this map, many of these are breaking county lines, and even counties like Guilford County, which 65% we saw going for Democrats in some races, it's still a Democratic core to Guilford County with a lot of red areas, particularly in some of the agricultural rural areas around outside the outskirts of Greensboro. Republicans in the legislature who drew these maps took advantage of that and to great success this cycle.
When I looked this morning, it appeared as though the projections for the U.S. House as a whole were leaning Republican. They need 218 seats to maintain their majority in the U.S. House. If it were to be the case where you have former President Trump back in office in the White House, you have an entire Congress with both chambers controlled by Republicans, what's that going to mean for Democratic influence the next 4 years?
If Democrats are able to somehow keep the House, even though or take back the House, it doesn't really look like that's going to happen, but they would be able to block legislation coming from Trump, and they would be able to hold hearings, investigations, a number of other things that could sort of derail Trump's goals. They could also impeach him again. If Trump takes the House back, he's unlikely to be impeached at least for the next 2 years. It also means the areas that he has to focus on is getting enough U.S. senators to break the filibuster in order to invoke cloture. So Republicans 52 Senate seats, they could lose 2 of those and Vice President Vance break that tie. But it does shift where Trump can focus his efforts not so much on the House, but on swing senators to vote his way.
Well, even with Republicans in control, one of the key issues coming up legislatively is going to be reproductive rights. I'll send it back to Lauren for a look at that issue that was on several ballots across the country this election.
Yes, Megan, it's 7:46. Voters in Maryland, Colorado, and Nevada all enshrine abortion rights in their state constitutions. Another win for abortion rights advocates came out of New York, where voters approved a measure known as Proposal 1. Abortion up to 24 weeks is already legal in New York, but the measure amends the state's constitution to clarify pregnancy as a protected class against discrimination under the law. With these states being the key for this year's election, let's look back at past elections to see where they stood.
It was perhaps the most divisive issue outside of the name at the top of the ticket: reproductive rights and abortion. In the wake of the Supreme Court's 2022 decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, abortion rights groups turned to the ballot, placing women's health care directly in the hands of voters themselves.
My individual rights are super important, as are my girls.
I don't think women's rights is the #1 issue for America right now.
10 states had abortion on the ballot. In Florida, Amendment 4 failed. The measure would have overridden the state's ban on abortion after 6 weeks, but supporters could not garner the 60% of votes needed to pass, disappointing Democrats in the state.
It is not the end of our work, it is the beginning.
The measure did, however, earn a majority, 57% of the vote, which supporters welcomed as a small victory.
It is still a historic outcome that demonstrates how the majority of Floridians oppose Governor DeSantis' 6-week abortion ban.
Pro-choice measures did succeed in other states, however, including Missouri, which currently has some of the country's strictest laws, banning abortion entirely with the exception of medical emergencies. In Arizona, voters also passed a constitutional initiative allowing abortion rights up to fetal viability, generally considered around 23 or 24 weeks. Naomi Ruckham, CBS News.
It is now 7:48. We've been analyzing the numbers from election night. Stick with us. We're going to take a brief pause as we do a cut-in, but you'll get a behind-the-scenes look as we get ready for that cut-in.
And we'll be right back here coming up next.
Results are still coming in this morning, but the race is over. CBS News projects Donald Trump as the next president of the United States after securing 276 electoral college votes. Celebrations have already begun. Students at Grand Canyon University marched through the campus early this morning, chanting USA. To be clear, these are still unofficial results. It will take days to get the official results, with the audit set to start in the next 10 days. And then on January 20th, President-elect Donald Trump will officially be sworn in as the 47th president at the White House. National security has already announced extra police presence around the Capitol. While the presidential race stretched into this morning, the big race for North Carolina governor was over not long after polls closed. Attorney General Josh Stein took the win with 54% of the vote. Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson conceded shortly after applauding his team and saying he was proud of them for running a campaign with no slander. We will continue live coverage of this election over on our streaming app. That's WFNY Plus. Here's Christian Morgan with a look at the forecast. Hey.
I appreciate you, Lauren. Starting out with a little bit of fog this morning and, of course, some cloud cover. And as that lifts, we'll get a little more sunshine back by the middle of the day. We warm up into those upper 70s as we go into the afternoon. And I still wouldn't rule out a sprinkle or an isolated shower, although most of us will end up staying dry today. We keep the extra clouds around tomorrow. The biggest patch of rain is going to be down over South Carolina and Georgia. But again, I still wouldn't rule out a couple of scattered showers, especially in our southern counties as we go into tomorrow, your Thursday. In the meantime, after that, we dry things out going into Friday. Temperatures in the low 70s. And then we cool it back off as we go into the weekend with highs in the 60s over the weekend.
Welcome back to WFMY Plus, our special edition of post-election coverage as these results are continuing to come in by the moment. Thanks for joining us or sticking with us if you've been with our feed for the last hour.
Yeah, just before 6 this morning, CBS and AP declared former President Donald Trump the projected winner of the 2024 presidential election. He is now the second president elected for 2 non-consecutive terms. So this decision was made after Trump was named the winner of Wisconsin. It was one of 4 battleground states the former president won. The other 3 are still undecided.
Trump addressed the nation earlier this morning from his watch party in West Palm Beach. On stage, he was joined by his wife, Melania Trump, his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, and several members of his campaign staff. There were also these photos of him preparing his remarks backstage. He made this speech before, to be noted, he had the required 270 electoral votes to win this election, but he was confident. In his speech, he thanked everyone and talked about his plans going forward.
Thank you very much. Wow. Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends on this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that. We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day, I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again. And in addition to having won the battleground states of North Carolina, I love these places, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
On the other side of the ticket, we are waiting to hear from Vice President Kamala Harris and her joint campaign with Governor Tim Walz. The two joined hundreds of supporters at Howard University to watch the results as they came in last night. Harris's co-chair, Cedric Richmond, briefly came out to address the crowd around midnight.
Good evening, Howard. Good evening, HU. I want to say good evening to all of the Harris campaign, the campaign family. Thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in the promise of America. We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the Vice President tonight, but you will hear from her Tomorrow, she will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you.
All right, well, let's come back out to our electoral map. A lot is still happening as we speak, with votes being counted in Nevada, Arizona, and Alaska. Still too close to call. I want to make note of Michigan here. In the last few minutes, our mapping system turned Michigan officially red for Trump. CBS has not yet called that race, so I'm going to watch that. It is leaning, or at least was a few moments ago, leaning red, as are Nevada, Arizona, and Alaska. If all of this pans out and these leans are correct, former President Trump will have swept all 7 of these battlegrounds, including North Carolina, which he won the past 2 election cycles. I want to look at the vote difference here. If we click on North Carolina, and we can look in greater detail about how he did in our key states and our race here. The vote difference was greater than that of the previous 2 elections he won. 191,000 votes separated him from Vice President Kamala Harris, with a 51% lead here compared to her 47%. She did well in the expected Democratic areas, of course, with big city centers like Greensboro, Raleigh-Durham area, Asheville, and Charlotte-Mecklenburg County, for example. But overall, this race went to Trump pretty definitively in this election. I want to bring back the total here and look at the electoral map here. We are still awaiting these official results, but he does have at least 270 needed to secure this presidency. He is officially the president-elect at this point, even though he made his victory speech before he had that required 270 votes were in his favor, and he was confident enough to go forward with that. That said, we have not heard from the former vice president this morning. She has not yet conceded. We just shared sound from her campaign co-chair, who said we will hear from her this morning, but she was not prepared to concede last night. Let's take this map full, and I'll make my way back to the table here. We have some analysis from Elon poll director Jason Husser, who essentially predicted this outcome with the polling data you had available, Jason, and with the early voting turnout, which was record-breaking in North Carolina, had a huge play overall nationwide. People were eager and excited to vote in this election.
We were finding in really every swing state average that Trump had a very slight advantage, or he was only behind by half a point on the averages. So in Wisconsin and Michigan, now that we're talking about Michigan being called, Harris had an advantage in the polls of less than 1 point, something like a 0.3% advantage. What I was anticipating was things would break one direction. And so I still think everybody was right saying this election was too close to call. But once these ties started breaking, they were going to break one way. We could have easily seen a world in which the map looked totally different, that all 7 broke the other direction. And that's because we are at such a divided point in American history that a 2% change of voters can make a huge difference in terms of who actually wins and loses. We're also seeing some interesting dynamics play out in the West. Trump is doing better in 2024 than he did in 2016 or 2020 in Nevada and Arizona. Some of that has to do with people choosing where they want to live based on their politics. We're seeing out-migration from California, of California Republicans who's saying that they'd rather live in Arizona where they have their values that are more consistent. Similar thing in North Carolina, Republicans in New York moving down here in the Charlotte and Raleigh areas.
Going back to the polls, you know, for weeks we've been saying it's so close. For those who might not be familiar, explain how the polls work and can we trust them?
Polling has done a sort of seismic shift, not because of the 2016 election, but because of caller ID. At one point, we could be pretty confident that every household that had a voter also had a cell phone or had a telephone. There was also no caller ID not that long ago. So if somebody called, it could be really important. It could be your long-lost best friend. At one point in time, we could do really good telephone polling. That doesn't work anymore because people screen their calls. polls have shifted to online polling. It was a pretty rough 4 or 5 years there, honestly. I've questioned my career choices. Now online polling, what we're seeing in this cycle, has gotten pretty good. Most polls are going to be off a little bit this cycle. I think that polling had a problem capturing all the Trump voters. There's probably 2 or 3% of the electorate not being fully captured by polls because they just would not talk to pollsters, and those typically were Republican men.
Let's talk about voter makeup overall. Women were expected to turn out in Iowa in large numbers, and there were suggestions there that polling of a historically red state could go in favor of Kamala Harris. That did not happen. What do you think women did overall in determining the outcome for her, and that it did not go in her favor?
We're seeing big gender gaps in this race. They're not as big as what some polls were showing in terms of gender gaps. I think some of that has to do with, while the overall numbers of polls are looking pretty good, the composition of each subgroup within the polls could be a little bit off. So polls are a snapshot, they're an estimate overall, and there's probably some stories about gender differences that were based on digging a little too deep into what the data could really honestly tell us.
Going back to the issues, the big things this year were the economy, immigration, abortion, and democracy itself in general. As we can see, Donald Trump pretty much is sweeping these swing states. What issue do you think brought him over the edge?
We're seeing the economy play a big role on voters. Democracy showed up in exit polls as a top issue, but that was one that really did break either way. Because the economy showed up and because it is an incumbent sort of referenda on an incumbent party, even though Biden's not on the ticket, it was a story about, is the economy doing great? And the answer is it's not doing great. It's probably doing better than what many Republicans are saying it's doing, but as inflation has hit a lot of people, it was just on people's minds. It's a mixed bag economy, but a mixed bag wasn't enough for Democrats to retain power.
Let's pull up that Electoral College map one more time. I want to look at some of these states Kamala Harris was really banking on. That blue wall was broken. And again, I want to be clear, Michigan not yet called by CBS. It is showing up on our maps as being projected as a Trump win. But this blue wall of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, she needed those to win this election, and she was not able to get that done despite spending considerable time campaigning in those states these last few days. What do you think it was that turned the tide in Trump's favor?
Going into election night, my guess was Trump had a big enough cushion in North Carolina, Georgia, probably Arizona, that he was going to have to win at least one of all three of these sort of blue wall states. Part of Trump's advantage this cycle is he was able to connect with people in a sort of working class, blue collar background in these states that have had a very intensive manufacturing interest. We've seen such economic changes in the Rust Belt, as it's often called, or places that were really centers of American industry but have changed so much due to international trade. I think the hesitancy of some unions to really get behind Harris full force may have made the difference here.
Trump will be the second president to win non-consecutive terms. How do you think he's going to fare in this next term?
Trump is currently positioned that he could probably make some big legislative wins. Not huge wins, that would require a supermajority in the Senate to pull that off. Right now, the biggest question on my mind is what's happening with the U.S. House of Representatives seats. If Trump is able to retain the House, he's getting an increasingly healthy buffer in the Senate. He'll be able to get his nominees for cabinet positions through pretty easily, and if there's vacancies in big seats for like the Supreme Court, he'll have a much easier time.
Let's move on to the lieutenant governor's race. Any surprises there?
No major surprises in the lieutenant governor's race. What is important to note in the lieutenant governor's race is Stein will have a big advantage over what Cooper had. Cooper had to have on his mind constantly that if he left the state, the acting governor was of an opposition party. That was a reason that one of the reasons Cooper said he wasn't even interested in being the vice presidential nominee. Stein's going to have a lot more freedom as a result.
Let's look at the governor's race now. Obviously a big talking point nationwide too. This was one of the first significant races called with just 18% of precincts reporting at the time. This was the projection because of the spread of this race. Josh Stein getting 54% of North Carolina's overall vote compared to Robinson's 40%. He was unable to even win his home county of Guilford, although to be noted, Guilford typically leans blue. This was a significant race. Did you expect the margins to be this wide?
Myself and other pollsters did think that Stein was going to win by at least 10 points. Our polling had him up 20 points. Now he's closer to 14, 15. What I think happened with why Stein didn't even do better than he did was that a number of Republicans could not vote for Robinson, but they also could not vote for Stein and ended up skipping that ballot altogether, just didn't fill anything in there, or they voted for an independent third-party candidate in protest.
We had our Kevin Kennedy at the watch party last night. Obviously, people who were there for the governor-elect were very excited to hear of his projected win. Let's listen.
It was certainly a big celebration here in downtown Raleigh last night as a number of people showed up to support all Democratic candidates. The headliner last night is now Governor-elect Josh Stein. A big crowd turned out to support all of the candidates, but specifically to hear Josh Stein speak and hopefully see him win this race. Josh Stein took the stage about 9 o'clock last night, saying that he was honored to be the next governor of North Carolina. He talked about the promise to kind of work together with all parties, all sides of the aisle, to move our state forward. He said he believes that the promise of North Carolina, it doesn't matter where you come from, that shouldn't limit your potential. He talked about investing in all of our state and specifically gave a shout out to teachers. He said he really does, though, want to work together across the aisle to make this state the best state it can be. He then thanked the crowd that was on hand.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is a treat to be with you. Thank you, Governor Cooper, for that very generous introduction. And thank you, North Carolina. Tonight, the people of North Carolina resoundingly embraced a vision that's optimistic, forward-looking, and welcoming. A vision that's about creating opportunity for every North Carolinian.
Now, Governor-elect Josh Stein ended the evening by thanking his campaign staff, saying they worked some long days and longer nights. He then thanked his wife and kids, saying that last night was an opportunity to celebrate, but today it's about getting back to work for North Carolina. In downtown Raleigh, Kevin Kennedy, WFMY News 2.
Well, the role of Attorney General is typically seen as a stepping stone to the governor's mansion, and we could be seeing that in this projected win here with Jeff Jackson, the Democrat who defeated Dan Bishop, Congressman Bishop, in this race. Jason, what do you make of the Attorney General's race? We saw a ton of ads for this, which could have ultimately leaned in Jeff Jackson's favor.
Jeff Jackson is well positioned for a very bright future after this election cycle. At one point in the cycle, it was not looking great for Jeff Jackson. His district had been changed by redistricting. It changed his plans for certain offices. The Attorney General in North Carolina has been held by Democrats for a really long time. And this race is further sort of reason why Republicans gave themselves the ability to sue on behalf of the state. Now we have a governor and an attorney general of the Democratic Party. A while back, the Republicans in the General Assembly gave the heads of each of the chambers of the General Assembly the ability to go to court on behalf of the state. So we're going to see a weird thing continue, which is the state legislature wanting a different thing for the state and suing as if it's a different party than the Attorney General. But I do think this means we're going to see a continuation of a lot of the legal policies that we've had in place for a really long time now, back when Roy Cooper was Attorney General and then when Josh Stein was Attorney General.
This race was really interesting to me. You have two U.S. Congress members who are leaving Washington and wanting to work for the state. Why do you think they saw this as an asset in their own political futures?
many folks who have made a switch between working in Washington versus working in their home states find that they're a lot happier when they're in their home states. If you're Attorney General of North Carolina, you can actually get something done. If you are one of 435 members of the House that can't get anything done most of the time anyway, it can be extremely frustrating. So folks, for example, who've been U.S. senators and state governors often report that they were much more satisfied when they were a governor than a U.S. senator.
Interesting, Jason. Thanks so much for your analysis. Much more coming up. We do have to pause our coverage here on WFMY Plus to do a television segment for CBS Mornings. You'll be seeing a behind the scenes look for the next 10 minutes or so, and then we'll be right back here on WFMY Plus. So grab a cup of coffee and stick with us for this post-election morning.
We have been following the races all night and all morning. Here's a look at some of our local representatives and how they did. We've learned North Carolinians want Mo Green to be the next superintendent of public instruction. He's projected to win over Michelle Morrow. If you'll remember, their race heated up after it was revealed Morrow had attended the January 6 riots. That's according to the Associated Press. She also allegedly called public schools, quote, liberal indoctrination centers. As of right now, Morrow has not publicly conceded. We've reached out to Morrow and her team following the latest results. Let's move to the state races as we learn about the next lieutenant governor, attorney general, and state superintendent. Democrat Rachel Hunt leads Republican Hal Weatherman in the race for lieutenant governor with 100% precincts reporting. It's been a tight race now, sitting at just under a 2-point difference. Jeff Jackson has been declared the winner as the next attorney general. He took a 51% of the votes over Republican Dan Bishop. For more live coverage, head over to our streaming app. That's WFNY Plus. We will be there for the next couple of hours. Here's Christian Morgan with a look at the forecast.
It was starting out a little bit foggy this morning on this post-election day with cloud cover across the Piedmont, but we'll have a few peaks of sunshine as we get into the day. Temperatures warm up into the mid and upper 70s, although I can't totally rule out a sprinkle or an isolated shower once we get into this evening. Don't expect a lot of rain. The biggest bulk is going to be down over South Carolina and Georgia, but a couple of those scattered showers may make their way to us as we go into our Thursday, especially in the southern Piedmont. So we'll watch out for that, but not much rain over the next few days. Drier Friday. Drier and cooler as we go into the weekend with highs in the 60s on Saturday and Sunday.
Welcome back on WFNY Plus. It is now 8:30. Donald Trump is projected to be the next president of the United States. News coming in early this morning. And then also last night, the big race in our state, the governor's race, Josh Stein has been projected the winner.
Yeah, a pretty big margin of victory here for Stein, with 54% of the vote this morning and 100% of precincts reporting, compared to Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson's 40%. There you have it on your screen. You can see the very clear vote difference there, almost 1 million votes separating those two candidates. So again, North Carolina, for a third time in these last 3 elections, will split the ticket, going Republican for president and Democrat for governor. We'll have a ton of analysis this morning about how that is all going to play out. Right now, let's listen to Josh Stein's acceptance speech.
North Carolina! Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It is a treat to be with you. Thank you, Governor Cooper, for that very generous introduction. And thank you, North Carolina. Tonight, the people of North Carolina resoundingly embraced a vision that's optimistic, forward-looking, and welcoming. A vision that's about creating opportunity for every North Carolinian. We chose hope over hate, competence over chaos, decency over division. That's who we are as North Carolinians, and I am so honored that you have elected me to be your next governor. Thank you. Thank you. I've got an easy question, and I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask y'all anyway. Who here, like me, loves North Carolina? North Carolina is home. Home to remarkable natural beauty. Home to small businesses and Fortune 500 companies. Home to some of the finest universities and one of the best community college systems in the nation. And we are home to the best people. As we celebrate tonight, our hearts are with the folks of Western North Carolina who are still struggling. Hurricane Helene swept in devastation, destruction, and darkness. But the goodness of North Carolinians shone through. Neighbors helping neighbors, people dropping everything to lend a hand. And by the way, none of those folks cared whether the person they were helping was a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. They just showed up because that's who we are as North Carolinians. And we will show up for the people of Western North Carolina to help them rebuild safer and stronger than ever before. I ran for governor because I love our home state. And I believe in the promise of North Carolina that where you come from should never limit how far you can go. That our kids and grandkids should enjoy a better and brighter future than we've had. That every North Carolinian should have a fair shot at success, starting a small business or getting a good paying job everywhere in this state, including small town North Carolina. To deliver on that promise, we must invest in our people and their futures so that together we build a safer, stronger North Carolina where the economy continues to grow and works for everyone. Where our public schools are excellent and our teachers are well paid. And where our neighborhoods are safe and women can make their own decisions about their own bodies. Just like rebuilding Western North Carolina, these issues, good jobs, strong public schools, safe neighborhoods, and personal freedoms are not partisan issues. They are North Carolina issues. We have big challenges ahead, but we have even bigger dreams to realize. We can cut taxes for workers so you keep more of your own money. We can pay teachers what they deserve and open up doors of opportunities for our children. We can expand career and technical education because you shouldn't have to go to college to provide for your own family. To build this brighter future, we must put aside our differences and work together. We must reject the politics of division, fear, and hate that keep us from finding common ground. We will go further when we go together, not as Democrats, not as Republicans, not as independents, but as North Carolinians. And I know we can do this because I know who we are. I have met so many inspiring people across this state. Debbie and Cornelius, who tragically lost her son to fentanyl and is fighting to protect other families from that same fate. Lauren, a teacher in Greenville, who digs into her own pocket to buy school supplies for her students to give them a better chance. I want to thank everyone I have met along the way for sharing your stories with me. And to the thousands and thousands of people from every corner of this state who helped to build this campaign, I am forever grateful for your support. Thank you for believing in the promise of North Carolina. And if I didn't earn your vote in this election, I hope to earn your trust by working hard for you as your governor. I pledge to listen and work across party lines to do what's right for North Carolina because no person or party has a monopoly on good ideas. To all of the smart and smart aleck young people on my campaign, thank you for the long days and late nights. Thank you for the hard and high-quality work, and thank you for the laughter along the way. They, by the way, are incredible. I also want to thank Governor Cooper. Let's give that man the hand that he deserves. Roy Cooper has led our state with a steady hand through an unprecedented global pandemic, a 1,000-year storm in the West, and 2 500-year floods in the East. He expanded Medicaid, strengthened our business climate, and fought for our public schools. Roy, I could not be more grateful for your service and your friendship, and do not even think about changing your cell phone number on me. My parents, Adam and Jane, raised my brother Eric and my sister Gerda to try to do what is right just like they did. It's truly one of the best gifts that parents can give to their children. I want to thank them, and I hate that my dad got a bug yesterday working early voting, and so they're watching it here on TV. Let's all say thank you, Adam and Jane. To my wife, Anna. rock star. Thank you for being the glue that keeps our family together, for keeping me focused on the things that really matter, and for being you. She is going to be a remarkable First Lady. We are blessed to have our 3 kids here today, Sam, Adam, and Leah. Mom and I love you very much and are incredibly proud of you. Fundamentally, this campaign is about you and all of the young people of North Carolina. We want all of you to want to call North Carolina home the same way we do. Friends, we are so blessed to be of this place. And while nowhere is perfect, I firmly believe that whatever may be wrong with our state can be repaired by all that is right. After all, North Carolina is where the Greensboro Four sat down and the Wright brothers took flight. It's where my father joined Julius Chambers and James Ferguson to form North Carolina's first integrated law firm to fight for equality and opportunity for all. It's where people come together to solve tough problems and believe that our best days are ahead of us, not behind us. This is our North Carolina. This is our home. Tonight, let's celebrate this hard-fought victory, and tomorrow we will get back to work to building a North Carolina that is safer, stronger, and more prosperous for everyone. Thank you, and may God bless you, and may God bless the state of North Carolina. Thank you.
You were just listening to Josh Stein as he gave remarks after it was declared that he won the governor's race for North Carolina. Lieutenant Governor and Republican candidate for North Carolina, Governor Mark Robinson lost the race to Democratic candidate Josh Stein.
It was interesting to hear Stein talk about his connections to Greensboro. Greensboro is Robinson's home, and Robinson was unable to get Guilford County. Let's walk through that race. He told supporters after he lost pretty decisively that he was not sad about it. He said there was still a lot left to do as lieutenant governor between now and January. And he said he really wants to hone in on Western North Carolina getting back to normal.
We love you too. We love you too. Well, as always, very first thing we're going to do is do what? Thank our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And we thank him a double portion tonight. Because I can tell you this right now, the window of opportunity for us winning this race is closing quick, folks. We realize what we're up against. We realized what we were up against from the very beginning. We knew that we were ordinary, just an ordinary person getting in this for the right reasons, to fight for the people of North Carolina and to make effective change. You know, it doesn't seem like it's going our way tonight. But it's always going our way. Because it's going the right way. Whether people want it to or not, people of faith know it's going to go the right way. Because we've read the back of the book. And we know how this all comes to an end. Those who would promote evil and promote wrong and call it right, they do not win. They may prosper for a season, but in the end, we win. So I'm standing here now, and I'm not sad one lick. I'm a little disappointed. I'm disappointed for you, because I wanted this so bad for you. I wanted this for the people of North Carolina, not for me. I wanted it for them. I wanted to represent them. I wanted to take their issues before the folks of North Carolina and really have those issues addressed. Not for the purposes of climbing a political ladder, but for the purposes of fighting for the people in the state that I love. But it was not to be, it appears. And I can tell you this, we're not going to stop here, folks. We don't stop here. We've got a lot of work still to do as lieutenant governor. We've got a lot of work to do in Western North Carolina to continue to help those folks to get back to full normal. We've got a lot of work still to do in the sphere of education in these last 2 months. We've got a lot of work to do still for the people of North Carolina. We're going to do it with great energy. We're going to do it with the same intensity that we've been doing it for the last 3.5, almost 4 years. You know, I'm standing here now, folks, and guess where my head is? My head is held high. And the reason why my head is held high is because I ran a race where I did not have to lie. I did not have to tell half-truths. I did not have to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars demonizing anyone. I simply traveled this state and told people about my vision and told the people of North Carolina that I have an unabiding faith in them. And told the people of North Carolina as well, it will not be the government that will build this state, it will be you. That is the message that we delivered to the people of this state. A true message of real hope, a real future, where every single solitary North Carolinian can make a great living. My wife and I will now take our time. I'll work these last 2 months as Lieutenant Governor. I'll continue to do what I need to do for the people of the state of North Carolina. And after the beginning of the year, I'm going to spend some time with my grandchildren. They are getting older, and so am I. And so we'll spend some time with family, and we'll assess, and we'll move forward from there. But, you know, I want to leave you with a quote from an often demonized politician who said something quite profound as he was resigning from office. He said, we think sometimes when things don't go good for us, when we lose an election or someone dear to us dies, that all is ended. It's not true. It's only a beginning, always. Because the greatness comes, not when things go always good for you, but the greatness comes when you're really tested, when you take some knocks, some disappointments, when sadness comes. Because only if you've been in the deepest valley can you ever know how magnificent it is to stand on the highest mountain. Folks, I have stood on the highest mountain. Going from being a factory worker to being the first black lieutenant governor of North Carolina has been the honor of my lifetime. Now I'm proud to stand in front of so many supporters and have so many votes cast for me by people who have confidence in me. It's not about the lies, it's not about the half-truths, it's about the people who believe in you. And it's about the state that you love, a state that I fully intend to continue to serve for the next 2 months. And who knows, maybe in the future once again, somewhere in office. Who knows? I don't know. But we're going to take our time. We're going to assess. We're going to spend time with family. Before I leave this stage, though, I want to say to each and every person I'm looking at right now, I see so many faces I can't name them all. I love each and every one of you. Not only have you added value to this campaign, you have added value to my life as friends, as supporters. The one thing I have not done this entire time in this campaign is shed tears. And I will not shed tears tonight because I stand here strong and proud, glad to have run a race that was upright and decent, while others around me refuse to do so. So we leave this place tonight with our head held high. And the only disappointment that I have inside of me is the disappointment that you all feel. Because I know so many of you want it so bad to see nothing but victory tonight. But remember, victory is pleasing God. Victory is pleasing God. And sometimes in order to please God, you have to lose in the sight of man. So God bless you all. Thank y'all so much for everything that you've done for me. We love y'all. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
That was a huge race for our state. In fact, the first major race called in the night. At one point with only 18% of precincts reporting. That is just how wide the margin was. Certainly not the last we'll be seeing of Robinson. We'll have more analysis coming up at 9.
Yeah, but stick with us. We're going to take a brief pause as we do a cut in. We'll roll into the 9 o'clock hour in a few minutes.
Good morning. I'm Megan Malaris. On this election post-morning where we are getting results in, we are waiting to hear from Vice President Kamala Harris and her joint campaign with Governor Tim Walz. The two were supposed to join hundreds of supporters at Howard University last night to watch the results and speak to supporters. Harris's co-chair briefly came out at midnight to tell the crowd Harris would instead address the community and nation later this morning. We will be carrying those comments live when they happen. To be clear, the results are still unofficial, but former President Trump claimed victory early. It will take days to get the official results, with the audit set to start in the next 10 days. Then on January 20th, President-elect Trump will officially be sworn in as the 47th president at the White House. If these results stand, national security has already announced extra police presence around the Capitol. In another major feat, Republicans flipped the U.S. Senate overnight. This is the first time the party has been able to wrestle away power from the Democrats in 4 years. For more live coverage, head over to our streaming app, WFMY Plus. We have comprehensive analysis. Right now, here's Christian Morgan with a check of our forecast.
All right, some clouds across the Piedmont this morning, even a couple of raindrops falling for some folks. And we had some fog earlier. There's still some hanging across the Piedmont, but it will lift as we go into the middle of the day. Temperature warm into the mid and upper 70s for the afternoon with a few peaks of sun here and there. We'll still keep some extra clouds in the forecast for the next couple of days, but not a whole lot of rain outside of a couple of scattered showers. The biggest batch of rain is down to our south across South Carolina and Georgia, but we'll keep an eye out for 1 or 2 pop-up showers heading into tomorrow. Drying it out, cooler with the 60s for the weekend.